Normally you associate Mercedes-Benz with luxury limos, but when they joined forces with McLaren, they came up with a supercar that was utterly spectacular, built in a factory that looked like a Bond villain's HQ. The SLR isn't built alongside other Mercedes in Stuttgart. It's built in Woking, Surrey. The Germans knew that the best place to build a supercar wasn't in their homeland, but here in Britain, by a company who are past masters in building supercars and also Formula One legends. Mercedes' motor racing partner, McLaren. McLaren take building cars very seriously. This is their new technology centre, rumoured to have cost £200 million, and we're the first and only cameras to have been invited in. It is by far and away the coolest factory in the world. The meticulous attention to detail that has won 11 drivers and 8 constructors' world championships is now back in the car business. As a customer, you're welcome to go and see your SLR being hand-built by McLaren technicians on what must be the world's best-kept production line. As ever, the magic is in the details. There are 37 patents pending just on the way the SLR is built. The entire body shell is made of carbon fibre composites, and underneath is the world's first production car to have a carbon fibre crash structure which should behave like a Formula One car in a collision. The brakes are Formula One style carbon with a ceramic surface, and in the wet they momentarily apply themselves to remove the film of water that builds up on the discs. You can even watch your car go through stringent wet weather testing. Current colour options are Crystal Laurit Silver and Crystal Galaxit Black. The special paint contains larger than normal metal particles for a deeper lustre. Naturally, there's a car phone. Just press the spanner for a direct line to the factory should you ever require assistance. You can't buy an SLR at your local Merc dealer. Instead, McLaren take you to a special chamber to finalise your exact spec. You might fancy some 19-inch alloys for an extra 7,000 quid. Red aniline racing seats for another 7 grand. And what about an £8,500 SLR watch? Then you'd have to write out a cheque for £336,000. It's time to see whether the 207-mile-an-hour Mercedes-Benz SLR McLaren is a real supercar. It's time for the track.
Look, you've got to see this. I've got an official letter from Mercedes-Benz. Please do not disengage any of the electronic safety features at any time. Sorry, Rob. My finger slipped.
The Mercedes SLR of the 50s stood for Sporty Light Racer, but this SLR at nearly 1,800 kilos is best described as a bit of a handful. You certainly know there's a lot of weight underneath you. And you understand why it's quite a stiff car on the roads, but it's perhaps not even stiff enough here out on the track. When I try to find the limits, it begins to roll, you think the back's going to go, but the steering isn't that communicative. So you don't actually know when it's going to go through your hands, you only know through your arse. In the end, once you've got it really, really sideways, then you know where the back end is. It's the halfway in between series, which I'm not quite so keen on. But all the time it's sideways, it's got a very strong feeling. It wants to straighten itself and spin back the other way in a bit of a tank slapper. So I'm never quite as happy as normal when I'm power sliding a car through the corners. Once you've kicked it through that nervous middle part of its handling and got the rear end stuck out, it's brilliant. One problem I've noticed with these little paddle shifts is that when I'm cornering, I accidentally change up when I don't want to. But that awesome engine really makes this car. The brakes, fantastic brakes.
And certainly on a racetrack, they're magnificent. Even cornering with the brakes on, no kick back through the brake pedal, ease off the power, get the nose in, again the waist of the car, you need to back off to get it tucked into the corners. But even that, there's very little understeer really with such a big car. It does turn in very well. If only the steering had a bit more feel, if only perhaps I could have a sports suspension settings for track use. This would be a mighty car. As it is, it's just a mighty Mercedes.
Stick that in your pipe and smoke it. The SLR has awesome credentials, but as this vigorous wheel turning shows, it doesn't quite have the ultimate handling poise required to be hailed as the definitive supercar. That title remains with McLaren's other road car effort, a car that has just 1 more horsepower but does a record-breaking 241 miles an hour. It is, of course, my all-time favourite, the magnificent F1. Join us after the break to see me